There are some goodbyes that are loud, shouted in anger, thrown into the night like daggers. And then, there are goodbyes that are whispered. Soft. Almost gentle. But they cut deeper. That night, Demet didn't raise her voice. She didn't slam the door. She just stood there, silent, her hands trembling, her heart louder than the silence in the room. Can was sitting on the edge of the couch, his phone still in his hand, the unread message from her open, but he hadn't replied. He hadn't called. He hadn't come. Not when she needed him. And now, she was leaving. I need to breathe, she finally said. But it wasn't the words that stayed with him. It was her eyes. Those eyes that once sparkled when they first met on the set of Urgency Cuss. Those same eyes that watched him fall asleep during long filming nights. The eyes that once searched for him in every room, now avoided his. But just before she turned to go, she looked at him. One last time. And for a moment, her entire soul was in that look. It didn't say I'm done. It didn't say I've moved on. It said, please. Say something. Do something. Stop me. But Ken didn't. And that was how Demet said goodbye. But let's go back. Because this goodbye didn't happen overnight. This was a storm that had been building for years, slowly, silently. They were the couple that fans adored. On-screen chemistry that made millions believe in love again. And behind the scenes? It was more real than anyone could have imagined. Their connection wasn't just scripted. It wasn't lighting, or good writing. It was something raw. Something undeniable. Those who were there, on set, backstage, at after parties, they all said the same thing. They looked at each other like they were already in love. And maybe they were. But fame doesn't come without a price. And for Can and Demet, that price was privacy. Every moment together, every glance, every silence. Dissected by cameras, turned into headlines. What started as quiet smiles and playful teasing turned into media storms and paparazzi chaos. They couldn't breathe without someone twisting their story. But the real fracture came not from outside. It came from within. As their careers exploded, they both found themselves pulled in different directions. Ken was flying to Italy. Offers were pouring in from Europe. Demet was making waves in Turkish drama circles, then Netflix, then global deals. They were both rising stars. But stars that rise too fast sometimes burn out. Late-night calls became rare. Messages went unanswered. Birthdays missed. Promises forgotten. And through it all, they never really talked about what was happening. Because maybe, deep down, neither of them wanted to admit that something beautiful was breaking. One night, months before that final goodbye, Demet wrote something in her private notes app. Something no one was ever supposed to see. I don't know if he's still mine. Maybe he never really was. But I miss the way he used to look at me, like I was the only person in the room. She saved it. Never sent it. But that sentence lived in every silent moment between them from that day forward. The world saw two rising stars. But behind the glitz, behind the awards and magazine covers, there were two people slowly drifting apart. And yet, even then, even in the quiet unraveling of their story, there were moments that gave them hope. Like that one night in Rome. They weren't supposed to see each other. They were in the same city by chance. Ken had a brand event. Demet was shooting a campaign. But fate has a cruel sense of humor. They ran into each other in a small cafe near Piazza Navona. No cameras. No fans. Just them. He looked up. She froze. And for a few seconds, they were just them. Not Can Yaman and Demet Özdemir. Just Can and Demet. The boy and girl who once laughed in between takes. He smiled. I didn't think I'd see you here. She smiled back, but it didn't reach her eyes. They spoke for 20 minutes. Mostly small talk. But it was in the silences, the pauses, the way her hands kept fidgeting, the way he kept looking at her like he wanted to say something but couldn't, that the truth lived. She left first. But as she turned to go, he said quietly, "Demet, if things were different." She stopped. Didn't turn. Didn't speak. And then, kept walking. That was months before the goodbye. But they both knew. It had already begun. After that night in Rome, something shifted. Can went back to his life, the premieres, the interviews, the endless travel. But Demet. She carried that silence with her. No one knew what really happened between them. The tabloids speculated. Some said they had a secret relationship. Others insisted it was all for publicity. But those who truly observed, they saw the signs. Demet stopped posting for a while. Her captions turned vague, her smile more guarded. And when she was asked about Ken in interviews, she'd simply say, "He's doing great. I'm happy for him." But she never said she was happy. Meanwhile, Ken was living what many would call a dream: Milan, Rome, ad campaigns, luxury brands chasing him. But even in the most glamorous photo shoots, there was something missing in his eyes. In a rare, unplanned moment, a journalist once asked Ken directly, "Do you ever think about someone you lost?" He paused. Smiled. "I think we all do. Especially the ones we never got to say everything to." It was one of the few times he didn't give a rehearsed answer. That moment went viral. Fans speculated. Was he talking about Demet? No names were said. But the silence was loud. Back in Istanbul, Demet was trying to move forward. She signed new projects. She smiled on red carpets. But her closest friends noticed something. She was still holding on. Not in public, but in the quiet. One of her friends later shared, off the record, sometimes she'd still check his profile at night. Not because she missed the attention, but because she missed him. And that's the part no one ever saw. They weren't just a celebrity couple. They were two people who didn't know how to stop loving each other. But didn't know how to make it work either. Time passed. There were moments when they almost reached out. A birthday. An award win. A song that reminded them of the early days on set. One night, Ken typed a message. "Hey. I saw your interview. You looked beautiful." He never sent it. Another night, Demet stared at her phone, finger hovering over his name. She wanted to call. To ask him, "Do you still think about me?" But she didn't. And then, came the turning point. Demet got offered a role that would take her abroad for almost a year. It was a huge opportunity. Global reach. New market. New future. But she hesitated. Not because of fear, but because a part of her hoped, really hoped, that he would say something. Not to stop her. Not to hold her back. But to let her know that he still cared. Just a simple, "I hope you're not leaving because of me." Or, "If you go, will you still think of me?" But nothing came. No message. No call. Not even a like. So she accepted the role. And the day before her flight, she went to the apartment where they used to meet. The place where they once cooked dinner, watched movies, laughed like nothing else in the world existed. She stood outside the door for a long time. She didn't knock. She just whispered, "Goodbye," and walked away. But if someone had been inside that apartment, watching through the peephole, they would have seen it. Her eyes. Begging. One last time. Back in his flat in Rome, Ken opened his phone. Scrolled through his gallery. Stopped on an old video. They were on set. Demet was laughing, trying to say a line but kept messing up. He was filming her secretly. She turned, noticed, and playfully pushed the camera. "Stop it, Can. You're gonna make me laugh again." She smiled at him, wide, genuine, full of love. He watched that video 4 times that night. Then he opened his messages. Scrolled to her name. Typed. "Are you happy?" He stared at the screen. For 5 minutes. 10. And then he deleted the message. The universe kept them apart. Or maybe they let it. Months passed. Demet was now living abroad, in a new city, filming a series that would take her to new heights. Fans followed her journey, the success, the style, the spotlight. But few noticed the subtle ache in her voice when she was asked, "Do you miss anyone back home?" She smiled politely. "I miss many things." But what she really meant was, "I miss someone who still hasn't called." Because yes, there was a moment. A small, fragile window where everything could have changed. It was the night before she left Istanbul. Ken had found out. Not through friends. Not from her. But from a fan account online. He stared at the post. Demet's photo at the airport, a suitcase in hand, her eyes hidden behind sunglasses. The caption said, "She's flying away tonight. New chapter begins." He knew what that meant. She was gone. But something inside him screamed, "Call her. Now. Before it's too late." He picked up the phone. Searched for her number. His hands trembled. He thought, what if she doesn't want to hear from me? What if I'm too late? He sat there, phone in hand, for 17 minutes. 17 minutes of silence. 17 minutes that could have rewritten their story. And in the end, he didn't call. He told himself, if she wanted to talk to me, she would have reached out. But deep down, he knew. This was on him. Demet boarded the plane with a heart heavier than her luggage. She looked out the window as the city lights faded. And in her mind, she whispered the words she had been waiting to hear from him. "Don't go." But silence answered. Time moved on. Ken buried himself in work. A new project, new contract, new interviews. But behind every smile was a shadow. During a podcast interview, the host asked, "What's one thing you regret not doing?" Ken hesitated. Looked down. "There was a call I should have made. And I didn't." The room went silent. And the fans? They knew. Months later, fate did its trick again. A film festival in Cannes. Both invited. Different panels. Different events. But the same hotel. Ken heard she was there. Demet didn't know he was coming. And yet, that night, by pure accident, they crossed paths in the hotel corridor. She stepped out of the elevator. He was walking toward it. They froze. No cameras. No screaming fans. Just them. Once again. She looked different. More elegant. More distant. But her eyes. God, her eyes. Still the same. Still holding stories she never told. Still asking questions he never answered. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. She waited. For a second. 2. 3. Then smiled, softly. "Hi, Can." And that was it. She walked past him. But just as she turned the corner, she paused. And slowly turned back, her eyes meeting his one last time. That look. It wasn't angry. It wasn't cold. It was just sad. Not because she didn't love him anymore. But because she once did, with everything she had. Later that night, Ken sat alone in his hotel room. He finally listened to a voicemail he had never dared to play. It was from a year ago. Demet's voice. "Hey. I guess I just wanted to say goodbye properly. I'm leaving soon. I don't know if you'll ever hear this. But if you do. I waited, Can. I really did. He broke down. For the first time in years. He cried. Not for what they were. But for what they could have been. Demet said goodbye. With grace. With silence. With strength. But her eyes. They begged him to stay. And he saw it. He felt it. But he didn't act on it. Now, all that's left are memories. A message never sent. A call never made. And a pair of eyes that once told him everything he needed to know. If only he had listened.